Well, hello there. This is Blitz Chess, a chess noob learning and having fun with chess. Really pleased to show you this video. I've recently been playing a lot of 5-minute blitz, 5+5. I've previously played rapid, but this month exclusively I've been playing blitz. Now, prior to this month, I've last played blitz almost 4 years ago, back in 2021, and I've really enjoyed it. In fact, it's sort of reinvigorated my interest in chess again. I've played like 30 games so far this month, which is actually a lot more than what I have been playing since the second half of last year. I'm going to show you 5 games, and this very first game is in fact the first game of blitz I played, which is why my ELO's a little bit low, and it's as if to capture the vibe, it's a game of the Vienna Gambit accepted. I've got white. Vienna Gambit starts off with e4, e5, Vienna game, and they play the other knight, fork b, bang, Vienna Gambit. They accept. I'm in for a good time because now e5, knight pretty much has to go back, but they try to pin. And those of you who know the Vienna Gambit will know that this is a mistake because we unpin, knight is attacked again, can't go anywhere on the board without just being captured. So knight jumps back. Now we bring the knight out to defend against that check. They decide to play d6, makes a lot of sense, but now that allows a very, very powerful Queen's Knight, the d5, very thematic in the Vienna Gambit accepted. And in fact, this specific line is part of my book, Become a Chess Assassin, Learn to Play the Best Chess Opening Attacks, on the chapter on the Vienna Gambit accepted. It's in there, it's really good. And here, black has some troubles. So they decide to move the queen here. Now, the best approach, the most accurate approach, is actually to take this way with a discovered check, but a really, really cool, romantic, not the most accurate, but pirate move is knight captures a pawn with check. And the reason for that is if they take this way, bang, we've now got a discovered check, also attack on the queen, and basically no matter what they do, we win the queen. We win the queen for a knight. So that's the logic there. Very, very beautiful, causes emotional damage. Now in this game, what they decide to do, they probably saw that, was they moved the king forward. So bong clouded the king, that's a mistake. Bang, double check, king naturally jumps forward. You can see that's a blunder, and in fact here there's a force checkmate in 6. What I did, bang, with check, defended, x-ray defense of the knight, the king steps this way, and now I give another check. Now Stockfish reckons that the bishop would have been better, but it's only better if black decides that they need to trade their queen for the knight. They didn't do that. They moved their king here, and unfortunately here I missed a really beautiful checkmate. Can you see it? Did you find it? The beautiful checkmate is knight to captures rook on a8, and it's mate. Absolutely delicious. Now in the actual game, what happened, here we go. What happened was I didn't see that, but instead I decided to play this way with check. Now that's a mistake because in this position they can trade their queen for the knight. And in fact, almost immediately after I made that move, I decided, I actually saw, oh, isn't that mate? And I was sort of kicking myself. I was kicking myself for quite a long time because black then spent, oh, how long? The next almost minute and a half deciding their next move. And they sort of worked out of the available moves, only one move prevents checkmate, which is to trade their queen for the knight. So captures. Now here I play in a much more pedestrian way. In this position, I've won the queen. basically just trade pieces, move towards an endgame, and that's pretty much what happened. And, you know, so there's a few more moves, checks, trading pieces, and in this position, you know, take more pieces. Here we are, another capture, and another capture. I'm now 15 points of material up, plus 15, check. And in this position, Black had enough and opted to resign. So really cool game, really beautiful checkmate, which unfortunately I missed. Let's have a look at the second game. Now for the remaining games, I have Black. So the usual format, I'm going to try to play an opening gambit, and then at some point I play a crazy, audacious, unsound pirate move, and then use that move to try to capture the win. And generally, I've been very successful with that. All right, so King's Pawn opening. So in this game, my opponent also plays a Vienna Gambit. So the Vienna, Fork B, Vienna Gambit, and I actually quite enjoy playing the Vienna Gambit because we can enter the main line. The Vienna Gambit main line is kind of like the Achilles heel of the Vienna Gambit player. They actually need to know it quite well because Black ends up having quite a few tactical options. So here we go, captures, captures, they play, this is the Paulson attack, Bardeleben variation, and here, I've discovered one of the things is in Blitz that my opponent often knows the opening okay. Maybe they've memorized it, maybe they know the opening. So no, this is in the 700s, so this is perfectly correct. Every single move here is the best move for White according to the engine, including D3. The problem, however, with D3 is that with the Bardeleben, we now capture, they're forced to take back, or with the B pawn, damaging their pawn structure, and the critical move to know for Black is we need to play D4, jamming our pawn forward, stopping the opponent from being able to play D4 themselves. If they play D4, they get a massive center of pawns. They can't capture here because our queen takes back. And one of the things I generally expect, particularly at the beginner sort of level, is that the opponent with the white pieces who opts to play the Vienna game, the Vienna Gambit, and then enter the main line, is that their knowledge of how to play the main line probably ends about here. All right, this is another very correct move for White, Queen to G3, but there's a trap here for White. You have to be very careful because if the bishop goes to H4, because White has moved their F pawn, there is a potential very dangerous pin. In this position, I decided I didn't believe that White knew how to play the position. So a deliberate, provocative bishop to E7. And the thing is, I know that White can see that I've hung the G7 pawn. But up to this point, I've played every move very quickly as well. So for the opponent, they know that I know how to play the main line. And I believe that they didn't know what to do about this. And the thing is, this looks like a trap. It looks like I'm baiting White to take my G7 pawn. Now, that's what I was aiming for, that it'd be so focused on this that it actually wouldn't recognize this attack. And I was completely right. White now thinks for the position for over 45 seconds, probably thinking, should they take? And I believe that they would chicken out, that they would think this is a trap, moving my queen into enemy territory, that the first thing I need to do is that I need to bring a second attacker, a second piece into the attack. And that's what they did. No, they should have just taken. That piece looks like it's hanging, the pawn looks like it's hanging. It is hanging. That's a blunder because bang, bishop to H4, pins the queen to the king. White's probably, pulling their hair out here. Emotional damage. A good game. GG. So this is a sort of psychological play that you can do. Well, let's move to game 3. Once again, I've got the black pieces. And One of the things I've discovered playing playing Blitz is that white often plays some more interesting, less common openings. In this game, white plays the Ponziani. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bang, c3. The way I usually approach the Ponziani is I immediately take the full center with my d pawn, takes, because if they capture back, and what we're doing is we're smashing open the center right from the beginning. Here they go, they try to push the d pawn as well, takes. They decide to take back this way. Probably not the probably is not necessarily the best move for them, because they've now got an isolated d pawn. Notice on turn, I think, even from a turn ago, we've got a fully open e file right from the opening. I love these open tactical games. So, all right, bishop out, pin, constraining movement. They now decide to attack my queen. Now, in this position, I decided to pin the other knight. But you can see Stockfish thinks that liquidating right away is best. It's quite mad, actually. So what Stockfish thinks is the best move is capture with an attack on the queen, take, and then bang like this. And this is just about equal. I think black might be just very slightly better, but Stockfish is just to liquidate. And in fact, this position is potentially quite okay for black as well. However, I didn't have the gumption to play that. So as I said, I decided to pin the other knight. They block, and so here, get rid of that knight first so that there isn't an attack on my queen. This now, creates these, somewhat isolated pawns. This pawn island, really, on the queen side. I now long castle, they short castle, opposite side castling. And in this game, basically, I go fishing in the Ponziani. So knight out, they decide to try to kick the bishop. And I knew in this position, probably retreating the bishop is fine. But I had a bit of a think and decided to go for it. Here is the pirate move in this game with h5. This is, to me, clearly an unsound fishing pole attack, but I am inviting white to capture, open up the H file, and obviously there is a scary looking attack there. However, if white doesn't do anything, then this bishop is just hanging out there for free in potentially quite a powerful position. It's the sort of thing where white probably recognizes that capturing is correct. And it is correct, but just because it's correct and accurate doesn't mean it's not potentially poisoned. Because after captures, this is now a permanent weakness for white, that open H file. Now the question is, can I take advantage of it? So they move the knight over here. That's a mistake. The correct move was knight this way with an attack on the f7 pawn. Unfortunately, in this position, I don't see the correct move. Can you see what the best move is here? Did you find it? In this position, the best move is we need to sacrifice the rook. The rook captures a knight. Brilliant sacrifice, because if the king now captures, and now we've got queen with check, king forced to g2. Now we line up a new battery with rook and queen, and pretty much white is now going to be forced to trade their queen for that knight, because all they have is bishop with a check, and it looks like a fork, captures, and in this position they have to take the knight with the queen, because any other move, it is mate. Queen captures, black completely winning. So that was the winning move. Unfortunately for me, after that move, I was maybe a bit hasty, I was a bit excited, and I decided to play queen to h5 right away to form that battery. That is not accurate, because here they decide to defend the knight with that bishop. I I attack the bishop, but they can still keep moving that bishop. I was thinking of let's create a triple battery, but they finally find their correct move, which is that fork, captures with a knight still there. That's a check, have to capture, and white has basically defended themselves against the rook queen battery on the h file. However, there we go. I've got another battery, a rook battery. Can they keep, can they take the win? So you can see Stockfish says white is completely winning, but what are they going to do? So they move the knight back. Looks like they've got that defended. Makes a lot of sense because otherwise, I've still got the, still got that risk there. But now I want to displace that bishop. If I can get rid of that bishop, bang, super powerful. All right, they now push, makes sense. Let's close that up. They're going to develop their rook, makes sense. Basically just giving myself an escape set for the king here, this way. So they couldn't take, they decide to infiltrate with the rook. And in this position, notice that they're also hanging that pawn. My goal was to make a knight dance. So knight from e7 to d5 to c3 to e4 with the goal of attacking the bishop. That is my goal. I get rid of that bishop and suddenly the h file is once again mine. White unfortunately didn't pick up on this tactic. So there we go. Knight moves. Looks like I had to move. They push another pawn. There we go. Last chance for white, with the attack, straight up hanging. And I think maybe they were getting a little bit flustered as it was down on time. The correct move for them was to trade their rook for my knight. They had to do this. They didn't. And bang, I take. You can see, complete reversal. They try to move sort of the king out of the way. Look, with check, with that attack, they move the king back, bang, take the knight, and it's basically all lost because I control that square, and pretty much no matter what white does, that now gives another check, and bang, I take their rook as well, completely winning. White opts to resign. All right, let's now go to the next game. And this game, it's a really, really cool one. It's the Englund complex. And once again, it's another opening that I actually show this particular line in my book. You should continue to consider getting it in Amazon. All right, so my opponent starts off with Queen's Pawn opening. And the thing I love doing against a Queen's Pawn opening is the Englund Gambit with e5. In this position, white pretty much has to accept. If they do anything else, like the Queen's Pawn opening is potentially kind of ruined if they want to play sort of a typical sort of opening, and it basically goes back to equality. This is technically a bad opening, but only if white accepts. If they accept, excellent, plays into my system. This is my place. And so knight with an attack, they defend. Very natural. Queen out with an attack, bishop defend. And bang, we've got the triple fork killer black queen of the Englund complex. And in this position, white needs to find, in terms of the refutation, 3 consecutive moves. They have to find those 3 consecutive moves. If they don't, black is winning. Now, often white can find the moves, or they might even know it, particularly at the later beginner intermediate level. But with that, we can make a trap based on their knowledge of knowing what the refutation is. So refutation, first move, bishop has to block the check with an attack. We take the b pawn. The second move they need to know is knight to c3. And here, the usual way of playing for black is we now have an attack there, and then bang, that's the third move of the refutation, or rook to b1, attacking the queen, and the queen basically normally would go here, but I usually like playing the Hamilton variation or the queen sack variation, captures, knight back, and now we've got an attack on that e-pawn. It's technically a mistake, but surprisingly playable for black. And it's basically where you just don't compromise on your romantic principles. I'm going to take it. I'm going to force, sacrifices and play on. Again, surprisingly playable. So that's what I would normally do against people who clearly know the refutation. However, one of the options, because I had the sense with how white was responding, was that they weren't very familiar with the Englund complex. And here, it's in my book, there's a very, very tricky move, which is rather than bishop to b4, we do knight to b4. Tricky, a devious move, and if white is not careful, or they're just rote playing the refutation, if white now plays rook b1, you remember that was the correct move in the normal refutation. It's the third excellent move. This is a blunder, and it's a blunder because notice that that king is basically smothered. Knight captures the c2 pawn with check, and it forces the queen to capture the knight. Only legal move. We capture back, bang, bang, and white has lost a queen. Now, in this position, white recognized what happened and they opted to resign. Emotional damage. Good game. GG. All right, last game, game 5, and this one is my favorite. Just played this very recently. It's a cracker. It's another Englund Gambit. So white leads, queen's pawn opening, and I play the Englund Gambit. But here, they decline the Gambit with e3. And you can see, basically back to equality. For us with black, very simple. Take, develop, and here, my approach in this game was at the beginning, in the opening, was just to probe, was just try to, get white to see whether they'll make a mistake. Knight forward, attack on the bishop, bishop backs, and now bishop out with check. Why check? Because c3, that's the accurate move, but sort of gums things up a little bit, particularly if they want to develop their knight. Bishop all the way back, but white plays well. So here, I decide to open up that diagonal for my light square bishop. They move the queen, getting ready to long castle. G6 with the potential attack here on their queen. They long castle, I make the attack. Pretty much forces this. And so captures. I develop my other knight, queen forward, and now I also long castle. It's not so clear for white what's the best move. So they played this before, makes a lot of sense. Stockfish doesn't really like it. You can see it gives a small advantage to black. They reckon some more slower, hesitant waiting moves is better, such as a3 or maybe h4. And this doesn't look like a queen's pawn opening game. It's open, it's tactical. Even if I only get equality, it doesn't matter because I get the sort of games I like. Very, very nice. They leap their knight forward here. Stockfish calls this a mistake. This is, I think, Stockfish being a little bit harsh. You can actually see the same. They reckon a3, h4, moving the knight backwards to be the best moves. Now, this is potentially a mistake because it looks like they've got this attack with the fork, but surprisingly, Stockfish sees a way out from this, which is f4. They can give the fork. It doesn't work because we take with an attack on the queen. I think queen potentially, has to take here, is potentially best. And then we now, there's a number of moves, but effectively we end up giving a pin on their knight in some way after we pressure their queen into moving. So it's a complicated line, machine line. I think this is actually a perfectly good move for white, even though Stockfish thinks it's a mistake. Now, the way I resolved this problem with the fork is I decided to take, because after it captures this way, we have an attack on their knight. No longer can jump forward because my queen controls the 7th rank. They're pushed back, centralize a rook. They try to develop maybe. I attack their knight again. They try to push it forward once again. Doesn't work with an attack. queen still controls the 7th rank, and now their knight is pushed to the edge of the board on the h file. And because we've both castled queen side, the knight on the king side is out of the game. It's not participating with where the battle was. In this position, I wasn't 100% sure what the best move was. I thought it probably makes sense to keep pushing these pawns forward, and I think Stockfish agrees with that. But I thought that if I wasn't accurate, I'd just end up allowing white to rotate these pieces on the wrong side of the board back into the picture. So wasn't sure that that was the best way for me to play. And so now I've got my second, my pirate move in this game, which is rook to e3, attacking the queen. Stockfish doesn't like it, but it's only not accurate if white finds the correct move, and that is a hard move to find. It's queen to b5. Very difficult to commit to that move, I think, because it looks like the queen's just going to get trapped in that space. They play a very sensible looking move, queen to c2. It's a bit inaccurate. And in this position, what I was seeing was maybe I could get a knight there with a very lovely fork. That was my idea. A bit mundane, maybe, but only mundane because Stockfish finds an absolute cracker of a move. Let's see whether you can find the best move in this position. Did you find it? It's hard to see. This line has 2 piece sacrifices, starting with knight to b4. Attack on the queen. Capture opens up the c file. Now we take with our other knight with an attack on the queen. Queen moves forward, attack on our knight, but now queen to a4. And white has a problem. So if they're not careful, knight to a2 gives a check, discovered, attack queen on queen, I win the queen. Queen can't go back here to do any defense or have an attack on my queen because it's controlled by my rook. The third rank is controlled by my rook. So only good move is a3, disallowing access for my queen to the a2 square. But here comes the second awesome sacrifice. Rook to c3, a royal fork. They can't take this way because that would be checkmate. They can't just move the king because straight up win the queen. Queen has to take the rook, and now knight to a2. Once again, another royal fork. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just delicious. You know, if white plays accurately, black is actually only slightly ahead, but it doesn't matter, I think. This is a romantic triumph if you find this line. I did not see this line in the game. I'll be very proud if I did. I rather saw that other attack, so my decision was to bring my rook back to e7 to prepare this fork. Now, white decides to play this bishop. Looks like a very good move. Stockfish reckons you can play this fork immediately because it's tempo winning. I wasn't too sure about that, so I played g5 first. They take with the knight. Now I've got that attack. Move the queen, take the rook. They now leap the knight away, seemingly with the attack. Stockfish reckons in this position, knight captures here is best because it's tempo winning. I didn't see that in the game. Instead, I decided to play this way because I wanted to save my rooks. This basically forces white to take with the queen. And now, battery of rooks. I've saved my rooks from their bishop. Let's see what happens now. They leap their knight forward. Pretty good, I guess. I leap my knight forward, seeing whether or not I can do an attack. They leap their knight forward again. It's actually a mistake. And here I had a sense I knew what white was doing. Now they're going to be very sensitized with me having had that knight fork of their queen and rook. They're trying to do exactly the same thing. And because of that very, very recent symmetrical attack, I felt that they were going to have a narrative for themselves. They're going to get themselves in a bit of tunnel vision. Now, with tunnel vision, you can make use of that because they're going to be blind potentially to other possibilities. They create a story in their own mind. Here, I found the best move, which is rook to e2. Rooks on the second and seventh ranks are very, very powerful. Ostensibly looks like I'm attacking that pawn. Here, best move for, one of the best moves for white, in fact, is to move their knight back, to have an attack on the rook, to make it move off the second rank, and also to defend g2. However, this is supernatural. Looks like you've got a fork. Looks like it's tempo winning. But here, I've got queen to b5. And now what's the story that white tells themselves? They're expecting me to move the queen. They're expecting me to move the queen so that they can take the rook, probably expecting me to capture back with queen or rook. Their eye is on my side of the board, not seeing their side of the board. They capture almost right away. It's a blunder. Bang. Queen captures on the second rank. Good game. GG. My big takeaway from these games is to give Blitz a go. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But if you do play Blitz, don't be afraid to play the romantic style. Aggressive attacks. Don't be afraid to sacrifice pieces. Don't be afraid to play pirate moves. Clearly unsound moves where it creates a poisoned tactical weakness for the opponent. Because more often than not, if you got a plan, it still works and it's extraordinarily fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Consider getting my book because it will cover quite a few opening aggressive lines. I hope you have a wonderful day.